Right. Hello, everybody, and thank you all for joining me. I thought it was necessary, based on some of the messages I've been receiving, to have a chat to you collectively and see where we are at this moment in time and where we need to be. Can we maybe begin? Can I ask? Um, just for someone to tell me, as far as the center is concerned, just to give me a little bit of a breakdown as to where we are in the center at this moment in time. Is it up and running? Is it trading? Um, are there essential service businesses that have worked throughout the April period? And as far as the level four trading regulations are concerned, how many of you guys are up and running in the center, and what's it like? What would you say the percentages in terms of where you are at this moment in time? Would anyone like to just give me that bit of background?
Hi, Ava. I don't mind giving you some background.
Thanks, Lana.
A lot of the businesses have obviously not restaurants and salons and that type of thing, but most of the businesses in Paddocks have opened under level 4. So as of May. Myself, for example, I'm working we open 9 till 2 Monday to Saturdays, where we normally open 9 till 6. And it's busy. It's a neighborhood center, so there are feet. The problem is that it's not business as usual because one can't go to the restaurants, that type of thing, and coffees and whatever, the social distancing, etc. And also we can't sell our full compliments, or we're not allowed to. So, but it's definitely better than nothing. So that's where we're standing at the moment. Yeah.
So if you consider that in opening, you basically accepted the last offer that was put to you by your landlords, I would imagine that they've put a relatively generic offer to you as tenants generally. So what was the last offer that was put to you? Because you would be opening and you would now be trading under that last offer.
I stand to be corrected. I don't have the information in front of me, but the offer, I think, was 50% for me. I think so. I think it was 50% for March, and I think it was 20 or 25 for April reduction. I got back to them and said that I can't accept that, and that because I needed to at least cover the utilities, which I feel is fair, and pay my staff because the UIF hasn't been successful. I really have no choice but to do what I can.
Hold on, before we go anywhere, I just want to make a note of that because that sounds crazy that your UIF wasn't successful. I'll come back to that in a second. Sorry, yes, who's that? Dale.
Hi, it's Mayon. Yes, I've never used this program before. Am I the only one that I can't see anyone? I can only see myself.
Oh, no. So most people are not sharing their screens. They've just clicked off their screens just from a bandwidth point of view. So Mayon, please say what you want to say.
Also, when people introduce themselves, could they just say what restaurant or business they're from, just to make it a bit clearer?
Lana, what's your business?
Like Lana.
It's Coco Lee.
Oh, Coco Lee. Okay, so I'm in the same boat with Lana in a way. Can I speak?
Of course, yes, please.
Okay, so basically, yeah, we also opened up on the 1st of May, as per all other retailers that were allowed to. I was heavily restricted not to be able to sell summer items, of course. It's gone terribly for me since. The April rental, as I mentioned maybe in the group, I did come to some arrangement of paying 80%, although I didn't ever agree to it because I agreed to it at the time when the lockdown would have ended, of course, on I think it was the 17th of April. Up to that stage, they already offered me 80%, which I think is obviously pretty fair.
Now, hold on,
but then once the lockdown
are you saying in April they offered you an 80% reduction?
Yes.
Okay.
But that was up to the 17th, of course, and I thought I'd continue trading from the 18th of April up to the end. So once the lockdown was extended, I reneged on it. I didn't sign anything, of course. I just said, no, that's not good enough. I want 100%. So as of now, that's still unresolved. And then for May, I asked them again. I said I want my rental based on turnover, and they haven't agreed to that. They've given me 20% discount. So right now, that's where I stand. I haven't paid anything. The Paddocks predominantly for me is for very older clientele, older ladies that we often cater for. And as you know, most of these people are avoiding all shopping centers like the plague. They're over 60 years old. So our turnovers dropped dramatically. I don't think we'll do more than maybe 30 to 40% of last year's figure.
So let me ask you this, Mayor. Let me ask you this. In April, you basically weren't trading in April at all, so there was no turnover. But in May, what would you say as a percentage of the average from July to December last year? What would you say as a percentage of that your May turnover is going to look like?
It's a bit difficult to answer that
Roughly,
now.
just
We're halfway
roughly,
through
just
the month.
roughly. Just give me a thumbs up.
So what's the question again? So you mean from July to December?
What people are telling me is they'll be lucky if they are making 20% of the average monthly turnover between last July and December.
I see. Okay, I reckon I'll be making maybe 40%.
40%
of the average.
Average, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, believe it or not, but that's good. That's almost double what the national average
I know that.
is.
No, I know that, but obviously I'm not covering. I'm still in a loss position. But I'm also surprised. Basically, whenever there's a sale, I'm surprised. Like when we sell an item for 1,000 rand, I say to myself, I can't believe people actually spending that money.
Right.
But nowhere near profitability.
All right. So guys, look. What we're discussing with centers generally is this: that in the short term, going the legal route is an extremely expensive route that is not yielding anything only because of the fact that these guys have signed leases with you. So what we're doing is we're trying to get the best compromise from them. And the best average compromise on a national basis normally looks like this. It normally looks like anything from 30 to, in your case, let's say 80% for April reduction. And in that regard, balance deferred over 6 months after level 3, all right? And then the compromise position is for May, because a lot of the companies and businesses are open, anything from between 30% to 50% reduction. And then exactly the same thing, the balance deferred over 6 months after level 3. So that's the kind of initial short-term compromise position on a national basis that we're seeming to be able to get the centers to start grappling with. Now, when I say start grappling with, what we do as CITA is put pressure on them. They then come back to you individually and try and negotiate a deal with you individually because they don't want to deal collectively with CITA because they've been given an instruction by SAPOA not to deal with a representative organization. So that's a different issue. We're fighting that on a different front. But as far as your front is concerned, these are the kinds of compromises where we're getting them to actually come back to you as individual tenants with. There is no compromise generally on recovery. And there is a chance, there is a likelihood that if May is the same as June, or June is the same as May, they may repeat the May offer for June. So at the moment, that's the best kind of compromise we're actually managing to get these landlords to come back to you, the tenants, directly with, as a compromise position. But what we're doing is we're also initiating a public campaign, which is the media and which is database mail shots. And essentially that public campaign is Save Small Retail. And in Saving Small Retail, we say, number one, we want to see percentage of turnover. And number two, we want to see 3-month lease cancellations for companies doing less than 30 million turnover. Now, this is a medium-term campaign because it's a campaign that we are trying to get the portfolio committee in Parliament on trade and industry to start taking seriously, and it's going to take time. It's definitely going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but this is our strategy at this moment in time. We're wanting to get a law in this country that says, as far as small businesses are concerned, small independent tenants are concerned, number one, we should move to a percentage of turnover lease as a standard legalized formula for small businesses. And number two, we should see a maximum of a 3-month cancellation period, irrespective of the length of your lease. So that's our medium-term campaign that we're trying to drive. It's very possible that it could take a year, 2 years to get that through, but we think it's worth trying to drive, to be honest. Any thoughts on what I've just said?
So would that be legal, what we are doing now? I mean, it's obviously not legal, but I mean, we're just not paying anything at the moment. Is
So
that the right way to go?
So man, let's talk about that at the moment. So the bottom line is that if the landlord compromises, then as far as rates, taxes, and operationals, that's standard, and then the agreed percentage to be paid. That has to be done. That's if the landlord compromises. Until compromise, you must pay the rates, taxes, and operationals, because you have a contractual obligation to pay that.
Yeah, I have done that.
But I would say to you, you hold out on rental. So what you're holding back is rental based on them accepting a compromise position. So what we would do is, if we did a collective approach, all right, if we agreed on a collective approach, so we would go in on the collective approach pretty hard, and we would say, right, collectively we want for April 10%, for May for open businesses 30%, and for May for closed businesses 10%. So we would go in as CITA on behalf of the tenants who agreed to participate in the collective approach pretty hard. And the result of going in hard normally, so you would give me a authorization to represent you. It's just a 1-page form. And we would go in hard, and these are the things we would ask for. And they would then come back, and invariably what we're finding is they would come back, and these are the kinds of things that they would offer you. They would say to you, right, well, we'll give you anywhere between 30 and 80% reduction for April, and the balance can be deferred over 6 months. They'll normally say from July. And then for May, 30 to 50%, because you're trading, where the balance would be deferred over 6 months again. So that's ideally how and where we would like to be in this negotiation. Unfortunately, it is a give and take. You know, it would be nice to be able to sit across the table and just negotiate this up front, but we're finding that whatever you're going in at, when they come back to you individually, they're cutting you back quite dramatically. And so we have to be strategic about how we do it.
Ava, I did just check. My last offer was 50% off April and 20% off May. The one thing which I said I couldn't accept, and then I just haven't gotten any reply to anything actually from now on. But what I wanted to say was, we are one of the centers where our operating costs are 30% of our base rental, which is much higher than at other centers, I believe. So that is an issue for a lot of us, because they've kind of upped the op costs. But we still have utilities. We have all the utilities that the other centers have, because I'm in another center, so I know. So it's kind of like a strange way of splitting up. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. I just want to correct something I said earlier. I think I got mixed up with one of my other landlords. I've also been offered 50% for April, and they've since gone up to 50% for May, Lana. So that's where I'm a bit more at the moment than you. So it's 50% for both months, April.
So you're on 50/50.
Not 80 on the first month.
You're on 50/50.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry, it was 80% was another landlord of mine.
Okay, so the bottom line is that maybe what we can say here is that if they're offering you 50% for April and 50% for May, but you were completely shut in April, we need to try and push the April
Yeah.
figure up to around 80% or even 90%, and accept that you're unlikely to get away with anything less than 50% in May.
Right.
Morning.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Andrew speaking from Andrew Boutique.
Hello, Andrew.
How are you?
Fine, thanks, and you, sir.
Good, thanks. Yes, I want to tell you something about my side. It's my lease is finished end of this month.
Right.
Okay, I am already 7 years there, and never he sent me lease. Like 3 years ago when I renewed my lease, he sent it to me after 3 months is finished lease.
Mm-hmm.
And now still he didn't send the lease. I talked with Ingrid, I sent her email. What about the lease? She tell me be patient. Now lockdown, and she need to send me told me before 6 months. Anyway, my shop in the food court, and I am in the clothing shop, and my stuff I import it. So now I can't import anything because all the airport closed.
Yes.
So I am like my shop like a restaurant because I am in the middle in a restaurant. I am in the wrong way and never remove me. Anyway, so for me, I didn't pay April. I didn't pay May. I'm not going to pay anything for April because not one day it's open. Same May, I'm like a restaurant. I go try to open. So I go sit like there like stupid. Nobody coming there because I am in the food court. And anyway, he's closed the entry from food court. Nobody can go there. So I don't know what I want to do with him.
All right. So Andrew, let me ask you this: your lease, which is expiring at the end of this month, that lease,
Yes.
you signed surety for that lease, right?
No.
What do you mean no?
No. I signed surety only about 4 months. This we make a deal surety for 4 months only.
Which 4 months? The first 4 months or the last 4 months?
First 4 months.
So there's no surety.
No.
So if there's no surety, you can walk away and finish.
Yeah, I know.
But what do you want to do?
No, I want to see. No. I want to see what I know I can walk anytime. But why I want to pay him if I am like a restaurant shop, they close everything. If I want to stay, and these people, he don't send me lease and the same, like always he make it like every time he send it after his finish a lease in the 3 months. So if you want to send the lease to me again, if I want to sign, but I want to put my price, if you say I pay 18,000 now my rent, if I want to say I want to pay half 9,000 in the month.
So Andrew, look,
for a new lease.
Hold on. I think there are a couple of things here. First of all,
yes,
you have to be sure that in terms of the lease that you signed, they can't come after you personally for the months that you're not paying rent. You need to be sure of that. All right. So let me have a look.
For like April, May.
Exactly.
You talk about.
Exactly. So let me have a look at your
That's
lease
fine.
agreement. Let me have a look at your lease agreement because I want to see what surety or what guarantees you signed. If nothing, that's fantastic because then you can literally just walk away. The other thing is,
I know. And anyway, he have deposit, so let him take it.
okay. Then the other thing is renegotiating to stay in the center. You're going to ask, number one, that they've got to move you to a better place. And number two, you want to renegotiate the rent and how they charge you rent. And that's where you can say to them, I'm not prepared to pay anything other than a percentage of turnover. I'm going to restrict it to 7% of turnover. Take it or leave it. That's how you would have that negotiation. And I'm only too happy to help you with that kind of a negotiation. So, guys, I suppose I'm saying to all of you that there is an argument to be made for a collective approach to them from CITA on behalf of those of you who are not in Andrew's position. And then there's an argument to be made for those of you who, like Andrew, would need an individual CITO representation to your landlords. And happy to do both of those. And the other thing you've got to consider is if there are any of you who've signed the lease in your own name rather than your company's name, where the value of your business is less than 2 million rand, the net asset value of your business is less than 2 million rand, if you did want to cancel your lease, even if you've got a 3 or a 5 year lease, if you did want to cancel it, in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, you're actually able to cancel it. And you would give 20 days notice, and penalties would normally be between 10 and 15% of the balance of your lease that you would have to be paying, and then you'd be able to get out of the lease. But that's only if you signed in your own name and not in the name of your company.
Okay. Iva,
Yes, ma'am.
your chat to, was it Andrew? I mean, are you saying that even though he owes, you know, in the legal sense of the word at this moment, he owes April and he owes for May, you're saying that he can just walk away? I mean, surely
I'm saying if he didn't sign surety, all right, if he limited the
maybe hasn't
surety,
signed it.
if he didn't sign surety, then the only action they have is against the company if the lease is in the company's name. If the lease is in his name, then it's even better, because if the lease is in his name, he gives 20 days notice and, quite frankly, a maximum of 10% of 2 months of rent, which means that he might be able to get half of his deposit back.
Okay, well, we don't know what his rental is, but he's still owing the rental for April and May.
Yes,
No.
yes, I owe.
But the point I'm trying to make is that but you understand the point I'm making. I understand if he hasn't signed surety, etc., then the lease wouldn't be in his own name. If the lease is in his own name, then he's not covered by the Consumer Protection Act.
Okay.
Yeah, but if it is in his own name, can't they then still sue him in his personal capacity and he gets blacklisted and all the other stuff?
If he signed surety. Because if you enter into an agreement in your own name, you still also need to sign surety to cover the debts of the business.
Okay. So sorry, I wanna Andrew speaking again. I wanna say my surety for first 4 months. I have a lease front of me, and I saw this one. And second, the lease in my company name. So me, I can walk anytime away, right?
You can definitely walk any time away, but what I would do in your situation, Andrew, is I'd get your stock out of that shop as quickly as possible.
Okay. No, first I wanna see if you give me my better position and better price. I don't mind if I stay.
But you also want them to move you to a better area.
Yes. This what I say. If you move me to other area, I don't mind.
All right. So we'd negotiate that on an individual basis. CITO would negotiate that with your landlords for you individually because you're in a different situation.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So guys, I see there are 13 people on the line, and what I'm going to say to you is that some of you would fit into a collective approach. Now, the purpose of the collective approach would be to at least try and get for each of you what has been offered to, let's say, Mayon and what's been offered to Lana. But we would go in and we'd say collectively, we're only offering you 10% rent for April, plus obviously the utilities and everything else we have to pay. And for May, we're offering you a maximum of 30%. And the object of but for closed businesses in May, the ones that aren't open, we're only offering you 10%. So that would be our collective approach. Invariably, they won't want to deal with CITO collectively at this stage, so they'll come back to you individually. And the kinds of things they would offer you individually is they'll say, there's no ways we can only allow you to pay 10% in April, but we're going to charge you 50%. My argument then is you'll negotiate them to 20%, because 20% is what the large chain stores have managed to get out of the SAPOA members. but the reality is you'll most probably end up settling between 30 and 40% for April, and or rather between 20 and 30% for April because you were closed. And for May, you'll most probably end up settling anywhere between 30 and 50%, with the balance being deferred. I think that would be a good compromise deal to have got. It's not ideal, but it's the good compromise deal to have got.
I'm sorry, I beg to differ, Ivor, because honestly, what we're going through, 20 to 30% even for April is not good enough, and for May, I just, I don't know where I am actually, but
so man, look, my
I've
answer to you is you're completely correct. I mean, it's ridiculous that you've been shut down, but your landlord has managed not to have to shut down his contractual expectation from you. That's ridiculous. However,
I mean, I do understand some of the arguments. I do understand that they've had to still maintain security for our stock and keep my stock secure, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I've been there for like 15 years, and I think they've made good money out of me. I'm asking them just to come to the party and just write off these last 2 months and let me carry on my business that I don't have to retrench. I've already retrenched one person. It's a horrible thing to do.
Sure. And that's the other thing, unfortunately. If Paddocks is a member of PIGS, the Property Industry Group, then they have an obligation in their agreement with you that you'll end up signing. They've got an obligation that PIGS are forcing on them to force you not to retrench. So you're going to have to say, I'm not retrenching staff.
Yeah. But on the utilities, I can just make a little comment. I mean, surely during April when we were closed completely and the spa was the one open, I'm talking about now common utility, the water, electricity. Why should we have to pay for that? Surely the spa should be paying only for the entire water and electricity account for April.
I'm not arguing at all. We know that's a problem, and the issue is that, for example, in Hyde Park, there are 3 essential service businesses that were open in April, and the other tenants have tried to force Hyprop to accept that the 3 essential service businesses should be paying for the common services. And the bottom line is they've just rejected it. And the thing is this, they keep going back to your lease. Now, your lease hasn't been tested in court for the COVID period and won't be tested in court for the COVID period until the courts are completely up and operational. Only because it's not regarded as an urgency, and courts will only deal with urgent matters. So it's not in the best interest of your landlord to hold out for when they could likely get it to court, because it's likely that it'll take 2 years for them to get a matter on the roll in a court because of the backlog in a non-urgent matter. And courts will not see this as an urgent application to court. So the point is, it's in your landlord's best interest to have a compromised position, but it requires negotiation and it requires a strategic campaign to get them to the table. Because at the moment, they're relying on the fact that SAPOA, their association, have instructed them not to compromise, have instructed them not to come to the party with you, and simply have instructed them to force the PIGS agreement down your throats. And so they're acting as a group. All the landlords who are members of SAPOA are acting as a group, not to break ranks with PIGS. And that's the problem we've got here. So the likelihood is that over time, with a sustained campaign, our public campaign, which is the media, which is a database mail shot to your customers and clients, and more importantly, where we tell the landlords, we're going to the customers and clients, and we're saying to the customers and clients, are you prepared to allow the landlords of Paddocks to completely annihilate the retail sector? Or are you prepared to say that you will stand by the shops that you've been shopping at? And so to get the public on your side and to tell the landlords we're doing that, and to tell radio and to tell newspapers that we're doing that. And it's an activation campaign to put pressure on your landlords to sit around the table and to come to the party. But what it requires is them to agree to break ranks with SAPOA and PIGS, because SAPOA and PIGS are not offering them legal help or anything like that. They're just saying that, if we stand together as landlords, then we'll still get something in terms of what we think we're owed for the April and May and June periods.
Sorry, Ava, can I just, I know I've said it before on one of the other groups, but, when we first started dealing with this, we said March, thinking that it would be over. Then we're talking April. Would it not be a better option when we do send our letter to Dale Glen, which hopefully is soon, and we can all be on the same page, but is to rather do it from a levels process. So like say, well, on level 4, if you open, level 4, if you closed, on level 3, if you open, level 3, if you closed. And I know in the beginning, we also spoke about tacking on to the end of the lease. I don't know if everyone would be happy with that, but just in the interest of Dale Glen feeling like they're getting something out of us sustaining our businesses, I don't know whether the other tenants would be open to that at all.
Have any of you seen the group letter that we invariably send out to the landlord?
No.
All right, so just give me a second. I want to actually pull it up and show it to you and what we actually say to them in the group approach. Just give me 1 second. I'm just pulling it up.
Mm.
All right, let me just put this on the screen. Just quickly do this. Sorry, just give me a second, guys. I think it's worthwhile you're seeing what we say to them in that group letter. And we repeat the same kind of thing in the individual letter. But basically, what we say to them is this. We say, as you're aware, your tenants listed are required by level 4 guidelines to fully shut down or to partially trade, whatever the case is. We say to them that this is where we are with the lockdown, and it's highly unlikely that we'll get to level 2, if not level 1. We say to them that rental obligations, as you know, as far as the rental obligations are concerned, they've got no mechanism of making any kind of money. But in good faith, we will start off by offering you 10%. But what we do want to do is we want to move towards a percentage of turnover, a rental option and at that stage it would be for March and for April, and then thereafter until a level 2 lockdown is reached, when according to the guidelines all retail is permitted in terms of future rental. We talked to them about the fact that in terms of the risk-adjusted model, this is a sharing of the risk in that risk-adjusted model that we think DTI would in fact accept. We talked to them about the fact that if you look at March, you look at April, and you look at May, we move on a graduated basis from 6% of turnover all the way up to 8% of turnover. In some shopping centers, we've even offered 10% of turnover. We then talk about operating costs, and we talk about graduating the normal operating costs from 25% for the complete lockdown all the way through to 75% for what would be the equivalent, I'd imagine, of about a June period. We do the same with rates and taxes. If you've got a generator, we do the same. Refuse, panic buttons, electricity stores, electricity common areas, water and water common areas, and then sewerage as well. We even go so far as to talk about storage space. We talk about advertising boards. And then obviously we say we don't want a marketing levy and we don't want a parking levy if you're charged that. And what we do as well is we say in this document that what we want is we will agree to a month by month extension. So if they've given you any kind of allowance for April, then we'll tack a month onto the end of the lease. If they've given you allowance for May, we'll tack another month onto the lease. And the reason we do that is because we found, for example, with the Cape Quarter, they've been saying to their tenants, we'll give you 80% for April. However, you've got to agree to sign a full year's lease extension. And then they say, if you want May, you've got to agree to sign another 2 years lease extension, which means in total, for an April and a May concession, you've signed a 3-year lease extension. And so we're trying to limit that exposure.
Sorry to interject again. Just because I know, and I've dealt with Dale Glen now since they've been there, I've been there since the beginning, but Dale Glen's only been there for a while. I don't know if they're going to go with turnover.
No, they won't go with turnover. They've been told not to go with turnover. So
is there any way we could give them 2 options? Do you know what I mean? Like, so either, and then also base it again, like I said, on the levels, because that's the only way we're going to have any medium to long term sort of security.
So I just want to quickly pull up another thing here. Bum, bum, bum. So this is one of the very first kinds of offers we started sending out. And in fact, we had a couple of landlords that grabbed this particular offer. This particular offer says to them, we will offer you your rates, taxes, municipal services, etc. That's all in the offer, but we don't want to pay marketing and parking levy. But then it says to them that what we're offering you is 10% as an ex gratia payment. And that 10% obviously will be negotiable with them. As I say, on the large chain stores, they've taken it up to 20% and they've signed agreements. And they've signed it for 6 months, by the way, with those large chain stores. And we're saying to them that as far as so it's 10% on the normal rental charges. And as far as recovery is concerned, we're saying to them that we want them to graduate in recovery at 25% of the normal rental charges, then 50% for the second month, and then 75% for the third month after lockdown has been lifted, just to give you an opportunity for recovery. So all I'm trying to say is we have different approaches for different shopping centers and for different individuals as well. And that's the point that I'm trying to illustrate to you, that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach in how we get to the landlords or how we approach the landlords. But the reason we're doing that is to put pressure on them to say, well, we don't want to talk to you, SITA. We'll talk to our tenant. And then when they talk to the tenant, they'll say to them, if you're prepared to sign a non-disclosure agreement with us, then we'll give you a good offer. And the good offer normally will be the kind of thing that they've given Mayon, which is 50% for April, but you'd like that to be higher, and then 50% for May once you start trading. So that's normally the strategy, to force them to say, well, we'd rather deal individually with the tenant, but then to come to you with an offer. Because up until now, their offers have been the pig's offer and not their own offer. And what we're trying to do is force them to understand that if they don't deal with you individually, then they'll have to deal with SITA eventually, because we're taking legal action against them. But it will be an uncomfortable situation. So first prize for us is where they come back to you as an individual tenant and say, we'll give you a better offer than we gave you previously, as long as you keep SITA off of our backs.
So are you saying that we should still try and negotiate ourselves individually?
No, I'm saying no. So my recommendation to you is we go in collectively. You sign the form that gives us SITA the opportunity to represent you. We go in with a group letter that you all see, you all agree to, and we can do that in a matter of days. We get it to them, let's say by Wednesday, and that letter says to them, we're offering you 10% for April. We're offering you 10% for May if a business hasn't been allowed to trade, or we're offering you 20% for May if the business has been allowed to trade. And we want you to recognize the recovery period, which will be June and July and August if they're trading in May, where we can only offer you, another 5% in June, another maybe 15% in July, and then by August, maybe 75% of normal rentals. So we go with a structured package to them. And then invariably, I mean, we've had, let's say 20% of landlords have come back to SITA and negotiated, but 80% of them followed the SAPOA recommendation that they don't deal with SITA, but they come back to you individually as tenants and make a good offer to you. That's ideally the kind of game we have to play here. And I'm sorry to say we have to play games, because as things stand at the moment, they are sticking to the fact that invariably they're not going to make you an offer until they're forced to make you an offer.
I'm not worried. I think they have to buckle soon, either, because I'm also part of another group called MIR group, because I've got some other shops that have joined this one. Do you know about this one? Jonathan Kinsley Hall.
No.
He's a consulting firm, and he's representing the big guys. And I can tell you, as of yesterday, none of these guys have paid any rentals for April, mate. Haven't paid a cent. The big ones being Cape Union Mart and Cellular City. And we've got a Cellular City in the Paddocks. In fact, yesterday I was talking with Sean Joffrey, and he confirmed that as of yesterday, they haven't paid a cent. They are definitely going for 100% full rental relief for April, and for May, I think they're still negotiating, but not much at all.
So look, I must tell you that the other big chain stores have all, and there are 3 big groups that have all accepted 20% over a 6-month period. So it's highly
I don't
unlikely.
think
It's highly
Mm.
unlikely that they're going to get away with not paying anything. However, we'll see. It totally depends on the pull that they've got. Unfortunately, the large groups, for whatever reason, the large tenant groups are not sticking together. They're not forming consortiums like they should be doing. Because the moment this block release is taken away, they're not going to be able to talk to each other. So they're not using that opportunity. But here in CITA, we're talking about the small independent tenants. The short-term strategy with CITA is to try and drive them towards you on a one-to-one basis where they're prepared to compromise and make you good offers. I don't care if you're signing a non-disclosure agreement, as long as you're getting an offer that makes sense for you, given your particular trading realities. Then at least we know we've won in the short term. The medium-term thing is to get them to, agree to negotiate with CITA, which we'll do over time. But remember, CITA's only been going for 6 weeks now. So, unfortunately, we've come into a situation where you've got pretty tight lease agreements that have been signed up. And so it's going to take a while to break the back of those agreements. But I think we're going to get there because there's a political will amongst the politicians to want to be seen to be protecting the small and independent tenant.
Yeah, I thought I saw another article that one of the other groups have recommended that the small medium enterprises get 100% relief for April and May.
It'd be fantastic. Certainly none of my tenants have had any of those offers yet.
Okay.
All right. So guys, I'm then saying that if we had a collective approach, how many of you would agree to be in the collective approach? Because there's no use in doing a collective approach for 2 or 3, then we might as well just do individual approaches. But if there are, let's say for argument's sake, there were at one stage 15 people on this call. So let's say there are 7 companies that want to be in the collective approach. We'll put a collective approach together. You'll look at it. If you're happy with it, then we'll put it to them as a minimum sort of collective approach. Knowing that invariably they'll want to come back to you and deal with you individually. But at least that will put the right kind of pressure. And then the second thing we want to do is say to you, can we put together a group database of your clients so we can approach your clients and we can ask them to get behind you as retail stores, so we can start a sort of public campaign that says, save the retail tenants of Paddocks. Because these landlords are not going to like that kind of pressure. And if we can put on that kind of pressure and pressurize them into coming to the table, we will invariably down the line get you a better deal.
Ivan,
can I
Peter
speak?
here from.
Sorry, all right, so it's Peter and then it's Dale. Yes, Peter.
Peter here from Paddocks, Mug and Bean.
Yes.
We've done an individual application in April. Obviously, things have changed now for May, and we will probably stick with another individual application, waiting for a reply from them. So I've received no reply as yet. Would we go with collective or we just stay individual? In
your case, because we did an individual, we will do another individual, but this time we'll put the heat on the individual. And Peter, I need to talk to you about that, because there again, we want to get as much of your customer base and your clients involved in asking that Mug and Bean Paddocks, be retained by the landlords, and that the landlords protect Mug and Bean Paddocks, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll put pressure on your landlords, but individually for Mug and Bean. You've got the other complicating factor that the Mug and Bean head office has also been trying to put pressure on the landlords around the country to, in fact, accommodate Mug and Bean as a national brand. But where they're treading very silently or carefully is that there's an agreement in your lease, or certainly with other Mug and Beans, there's an agreement in the lease that says that if something happens to Peter, then Mug and Bean head office have to take over the lease. Mug and Bean are treading quite carefully in that regard. I don't know if it's also in your lease agreement, but it's certainly generally Mug and Bean around the country.
Okay, another question is, we don't know how long this is going to carry on. Don't you think there will be some government intervention at the later stage to protect small tenants?
Well, that's
because
that's what I'm saying, Peter. That's what I'm saying. We're starting the campaign to pressurize the government through the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry to protect the small and independent tenants. That's the campaign we're starting.
Okay.
So we're calling for the Trade and Industry Portfolio Committee to convene a meeting where we can put a submission to them, and they can then, decide whether they're going to support the submission or not support the submission. But it'll be very strange if government come out and say we're not going to support a call by small and independent tenants to be protected, because it goes against what they're saying, which is that they have the interests of the small businesses at heart. So we're wanting to play on that. And again, that's why we're wanting you to get your customers and your clients to actually support a campaign to save retail at Paddocks.
And a lot of the landlords are still silent. They're not coming back to us with offers that we made. I don't know, Saita, I've received any. I've received none. Same with, we've got other Mug and Bean stores as well, like Growth Point, Paul, N1 City, Worcester. Growth Point is still gave discount April, completely 100% off. And then we're waiting on May, and it seems like a waiting game from their side as well.
It's
what's
not
going to happen.
I honestly don't think they're playing a waiting game. I think that their problem is twofold. As far as the restaurants are concerned, they have no idea what's going to happen with restaurants, and that's a problem. And then more importantly, if you're locked down, for every month that you're locked down, they know they're not going to get rent. So if they've already set the precedent, acknowledging lockdown for April, it means they're going to have to make exactly the same offer for May and then for June, until such time that as a sit-down restaurant, you are allowed to trade. And the fallback position, and we'll say this in our next individual approach to them for you, the fallback position is, even though they're expecting restaurants to come in and start offering takeaway deliveries if you wanted to, the reality is you wouldn't, because the moment you open your door, you're exposed to having to pay full rent. And we'll actually put that in your individual approach to them, Peter, because it's worth mentioning. But I honestly don't think they're playing a strategic game in not responding to you. They don't know what to say on the one hand, and unfortunately, particularly as far as the fast food, or rather the food component of their tenants are concerned, they're being told by SAPOA, the South African Property Owners Association, that they're all members of, that they shouldn't be responding to you and setting a precedent for the other shopping centers. So I honestly don't think that they're, trying not to answer you. They don't have an answer for you, and that's the problem.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, but Peter, let's talk individually about how we do a follow-up now with them.
Great. Thank you.
Right. Good. All right. So, guys, look, again, I'm saying, if we did a collective approach, how many of you would be prepared to play in the collective approach, or should we just do individual approaches for each of you individually, but putting on the same kind of pressure, because it amounts to the same kind of pressure?
Ivor?
Yes, Dale.
My situation is a little different. My lease expires at the end of July. And my rent is only 20% of my rental bill. So I'm not worried about necessarily my rental. What I'm worried about is the additional costs that overwhelm me on a monthly basis of another 120,000 Rand. Now, if I was to stay, it would necessitate that those additional costs that they're charging me would be minimized or reduced, so that my rental bill was approximately 100,000 Rand rather than 160. And I'm quite happy to renegotiate a new lease, but I'm not going to continue to pay that amount of money. As you can see, we closed. And the day that we open, it costs us 20,000 Rand just to put the key in the door.
I hear you.
So from the perspective of a collective approach, I'm happy to get involved with that.
No, I would say to you, Dale, because of how your lease is structured, we would have to do an individual approach.
Okay.
Even though
my support to whatever proposal is going forward.
Right. Guys, everything I've heard from Andrew, from Dale, from Lana, from Mayon tells me, and even from Peter, tells me that we should be just doing an individual approach for each of you and customizing that approach to your specific scenario and situation. It sounds to me like they've entered into materially different leases, virtually for every single person we've spoken to so far, and that there is very little commonality to determine that, that it's worthwhile doing a group approach. And like I say, it doesn't bother me because if we can put pressure on with 15 individual responses to them as opposed to one group response to them, it amounts to the same thing. In fact, the 15 individual, is strategically most probably better than one group approach.
But why, Ivor? Because surely collective is stronger. They could very, very well say, okay, well, Mayon Sachs, London Shoes, let's terminate his lease. We don't want him.
At this moment in time, your lease says that they will want to deal with you individually. They won't deal with you collectively. Your lease actually says that, believe it or not, which is an absolutely illegal way of doing business. But that's what you've all signed the lease agreeing to, which means then that if we approach them saying Saito represents Mayon individually, we're acting in terms of the lease rather than collectively. They've got one less thing to object to. And the fact is then that they would have 15 approaches to deal with rather than one group approach to deal with, which just puts more pressure on them to come to some kind of a compromise on a tenant by tenant basis. Okay. Just a strategic issue. Sorry, Lana.
Either how would we? I'm quite happy to do that as long as there's a lot of people on board and I'm not just sort of blowing into a dust storm of, but so how Lana, would we go about that? Can I email you? What?
Lana, let me say this to you. You need to give me the same information, whether we're doing a collective approach or an individual approach. So the fact that we just send an individual letter rather than a group letter doesn't affect you, doesn't hurt you in any way. It actually says that we would prefer to deal with you individually than in a group. We understand that you're gonna want to make different compromises on a tenant by tenant basis. This is our reality, this is our situation, and this is why we're asking you for a decent compromise.
Okay, I understand. So we would all agree on a similar and then move forward with the same response individually.
Absolutely.
Ivor?
Yes. Andreas,
yes. From Euro Treasures, I would prefer a group thing. I think we'll be stronger then. I think all the small line shops are actually all in the same boat. So individually, they'll probably all get the same proposal to Dale Glen. So I think if we all together, I reckon we're stronger.
So Andreas, can I ask you this? If you're able to find between 5 and 10 of the guys you're talking about who want to do a group approach, and then just communicate with me, I'll send you back. Basically, just asking for 5 or 6 things about each of those businesses. You'll come back to me with those 5 or 6 things, and we'll do a group approach for those businesses. More than happy to do that, sir. But it doesn't mean that we won't do individual approaches for all the other businesses we've been speaking to.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Fantastic. I tell you what I'm going to do on your Paddocks group is I'm going to send the email address again to you so that you're in a position then to just send me back your various information.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ivan.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you. And I will send a copy of this recording just so that you can remind yourself of some of the things we spoke about.
Right.
Thank you all. Appreciate that.
Thank you,
Thanks, Ivan. Thank you.